Hello, my name is Wyatt Hayes, and I'm going to be presenting on the lathe, the machine that shaped the modern world. So in early history, on this top photo here, this is a Egyptian bow lathe. The Egyptians would use a bow with a little bit of string around it, and they would wrap it around a wooden cylindrical stick or a piece of wood that they desire that is in general cylindrical shape, and they would move the bow back and forth to create rotational movement. And they would then use a tool to cut the desired shape they would like. We then have medieval lathes, which kind of took the same bow movement but replaced it with a foot movement. And that is our bottom photo here. And they would use various bands attached to these different diameters to determine their desired speed so they could use it correctly with their cutting tool. The smallest diameter would be to the far right, and the the fastest speed would be to the far left, and the slowest speed would be to the far right. If you can see that on the bottom there next to the foot pedal. We then have our middle section here. This is the Industrial Revolution. So this is the steam-powered lathe. And there wouldn't actually be a steam engine attached to the lathe itself, but in the factory there would be a giant steam engine that would rotate this big line shaft. And there would be multiple bands. If you can see on the left there, section E, that band would attach to the line shaft on the ceiling, and it would allow multiple lathes to be powered, 50 to 100. So we then move to, these are all manual lathes, okay? So these are, all the movements would have to be done manually by a human. We then move to our CNC lathe. So this bottom photo here, that is a modern manual lathe. And you can see these handles, that allows the operator to move it with their hands. But the top portion here, this is a Haas CNC lathe. Haas is a very common CNC brand for educators and also factories. These are done through automated movements. It's manually programmed in what movements you want using an axis, which I will go into more in depth. But it essentially allows it to be automated, which is great for mass production. Sitting at a lathe all day can be very tiresome, or a manual lathe every day can be very tiresome. So having a CNC lathe really helps speed up the processes and also the accuracy. So how does a lathe actually work? So if you see this top portion here, it kind of goes into the diagram of what we have. So the chuck is what you would attach your piece of metal to, or plastic, or desired material. The tool post is what you would put your tool on, which I will go into further detail. The lead screw allows you to control your x-axis, or your z-axis, which is left and right. And then it doesn't point to it there, but there's a handle above that lead screw that it points out that controls your x-axis. Now you might be wondering, X, Z, what about Y? Well, on a lathe, you are rotating. So that actually accounts for your Y-axis, because if you have a rotational cut, it's cutting on the left and the right side as it's rotating. So you can create your desired shape. Imagine a pinball or a chess piece. You can create these shapes with your desired tool and movement. There are other machines that have an actual y-axis incorporated in it. So if you see that bottom bit there, it has X, Y, and Z. That allows you to use live tooling for axial and radial, which I will go into more detail on. But this is the general diagram of how it works. So spinning metal and cutting force applied on the X and Z axis, and sometimes Y. Now our tooling. So this is where tooling comes in. So if you see this bottom photo here to the left, this kind of explains what I'm referring to. So you can make a cut on one side of the part, but it'll affect the other side because it's rotating. There are various different tools. For instance, this top tool here, this is a Kennametal PNG or a PMDG tool. This is a very known brand. Kennametal makes very high quality tools. And there's an end mill on the right. This is designed for making cuts similar to a drill, but instead of plunging like you would a drill, you actually just go left and right, depending on what you want. And this is kind of more in detail on this photo here. There's an axial tool, and there's a radial tool. A radial tool might be used to do drilling or using end mill cutting. Both of these are end mill use application and drilling application. But an end mill is designed to get your overall shape of your part. Think like a square, taking a cylinder and turning it into a square. Where a drill, you would drill. And then we have a parting tool, or right cutting tool, or left cutting tool. So you can make various shapes depending on the tool you're using. A threading tool. But yes, these are our general application for our tooling, for cutting. Now we have our types of lathes. So CNC manual, those are just the overall, but there are specific kinds. So we have our manual mill, or our manual lathe, which I was referring to before. We have a capstan lathe, this is our first sort of high production lathe. It allows you to put multiple tools on one headstock. Or if you see here on the tool post, you can put multiple tools here, but also on the turret, you can put multiple drills. So if you had multiple drilling operations, that would allow you to switch through the drills much faster than taking them on, taking them off. We have our wood turning lathe. This is designed for wood turning, as the name implies. This is going to be more so for carpentry, less so for machining work. And then we have a spinning lathe. This would be kind of a cheaper sort of lathe. This would be designed for making like woks or frying pan, or different sorts of scenarios where you would just need to fold the metal, not necessarily cut it. And then here, our bottom left image, we have a Swiss lathe. These are high precision machines. These are going to be designed for watches, for medical parts, very important things. And then to the bottom right here, this is a mill turn. This combines a lathe and a mill, which is a separate machine that I have not discussed in this video. It takes the best of both worlds and allows you to create extremely complex parts. These are incredibly expensive. Why do lathes matter in the first place? The Industrial Revolution would have never happened without the lathe. This created a true mass production machine. I mean, you think of all the sorts of things that are made with a lathe. Like, here we go, right here, a piston. These are essential. If the lathe did not exist, you could not have a piston. Dental drilling, medical equipment, anything with a cylindrical shape, it's typically going to be made on a lathe. So you can see how many use cases, especially with high tolerance, i.e. really precise cuts, really down to 0.001 inch, which is incredibly small. The human hair is 3.003 of an inch. This can cut, well, not this machine specifically, but a CNC lathe, some CNC lathes can cut down to 0.001, 1 of an inch. So the lathe allowed for high precision and mass production. The lathe is the only machine that can make itself. My teacher, Chris Huffman, at the school, he did a really good in-depth presentation on the lathe, and he mentioned that in there. And I always remember that, because that is really interesting to think. You know, like a replicating machine. It's not often you see something like that. A mill can also do the same. So here's an example of something I made. So this was my final project for my manual turning class, and I had to make a hammer. So you can see here I have threading, I have my turn down diameter, my larger diameter, I have knurling for the grip here, and I have plastic and brass here too. So this handle is aluminum, but this upper bit here, the head is made out of brass. So you can see how there are many different use cases for a lathe. You can make plastic bits, which these have a thread on there, but they were too tight to get off, so I couldn't get them off. so just imagine there is a thread going in there. But you can see how, you know, the use case of a lathe is immense. But in conclusion, lathes have evolved from hand tools to CNC marbles, and they have built the foundation of modern manufacturing. The world would not be the same without the lathe. If you can imagine it, a lathe can help you make it. Thanks for listening.